Hi there, we're back again with Jeff Hamilton, and we've been talking about different aspects of drumming today. I want to break it up actually, and maybe Jeff, you've spoken to me so much about some of your musical mentors, some of the drummers who, when you were younger, helped you out. I mean, Mel Lewis, I know you've talked about a great deal, and John Von Ohlen, and I thought maybe it'd be nice if you could talk a little bit about what those guys were like and what their impact on you was.
I'd be happy to, because they deserve it. When I'm always asked to talk about what I do, I have to say it's not really mine. It's handed down to me by people who understood that I loved and cared about the music enough that they could share with me everything that they wanted to and know that I would take it. And you're much like that. You know, I feel like I can talk to you. We've known each other for a few years, and you're serious about the music. So when you find a student who is so hungry for the information, you're willing to show them everything or tell them all the stories, and that's what John Von Ohlen and Mel Lewis did for me. Before those two, my very first influence was Gene Krupa. When I was 5 years old, there was an old variety show, Merv Griffin, I think it was black and white at the time, TV, and I remember being on the floor and, you know, laying on the floor this close to the TV watching Gene Krupa play Sing, Sing, Sing. And I don't know what snapped, but at 5 years old I said, I got to do that. And I tried to slick my hair back and buy a thin black tie and the black suit, and didn't work, obviously. But the next hero was, of course, Buddy Rich, which most of us from that generation were attracted to. He was very crisp, very clean, very precise, and I knew him more from the records of Oscar Peterson and, you know, the Verve records with Lester Young and the Count Basie, One for Count Basie, I think it's called. And then his big band got me, you know. So then Channel One Suite, West Side Story, and those things were really vital in applying, again, the rudiments that I had learned to soloing in a band like that. And then, of course, my dear friend Louie Bellson. All this was, and I saw the pattern eventually that it was all from the rudiments that started me into soloing in this kind of genre, because these guys all did that. They were all rudimental players originally. Louie Bellson, in the hospital till his dying day, had a practice pad in the hospital bed because he had to spend an hour a day practicing the rudiments. That was just his MO. He had to do that. So these kind of players kind of brought me up through that rudimental part until I met John Von Ohlen. And I played with John Von Ohlen. John was a trombone player till he was 19 or something. So he didn't start out rudimentally. He just sat down and played the ride cymbal one day, and everybody said, "You're the new drummer." So that ride cymbal beat that he had was so heavy that everybody had to buy into it. So he taught me that right hand thing. And he actually told me, don't ever practice the rudiments another day in your life. You have enough technique that's going to get you through the rest of your life.
How old were you when you?
I was 19.
Him?
I was 19 when I started studying with him. And his effect on me was so great that in eight months of studying with him, I got the call to go in a Tommy Dorsey band as a 20-year-old, and I left Indiana University to go on the road. His concept was coming from Mel Lewis, who I had heard on records at that time. And so then I saw Mel Lewis a few months after that at the Vanguard, and I put all that together. So my combination of the rudimental upbringing with Von Ohlen's right-hand looseness on the ride cymbal and his sound, and then seeing Mel Lewis, where that came from, and then learning that was kind of from Tiny Khan, the great drummer earlier than that. So, and Mel was a big fan of Gene's.
Really?
So all of it was connected, and Mel said every time Gene came through his hometown, you know, Mel would be backstage and Gene would have him sitting right there. So all of this is connected, and the history that we all care about so much is so vital for anyone who's going to be a serious jazz player. You've got to go back and do, what, 120 years of work now, of homework, and see how all this gets connected. So these are the main mentors for me, followed then by Philly Joe Jones when I had that lesson with him that whole day. So Shelly Mann was another huge influence, Jake Hanna, Ed Thigpen, a dear friend. And every time we get together, we'd just pull out a pair of brushes and sit down and play a newspaper. And you know, hey, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And we had such a great time exchanging ideas like that. Of my contemporaries, well, I'm a little older than him, but Louis Nash is one of my favorite brush players and drummers, period. Kenny Washington is fantastic, you know. Matt Wilson. So there are so many people who love that history that delve into it and can tell you everything that happened from early 1900s to now. So that's the passion that we all have, and when mentors see that in you, they're going to sit down and share that with you. And when I have to say that when I'm asked to adjudicate the Essentially Ellington event, that I found that in young drummers, the thing they're missing is that they never had the opportunity to stand in front of the Count Basie Orchestra. And they didn't have their hair stood up by just the power of the band and the natural sound of the band. And so they play differently. They play lighter. And you need a drummer that comes in and straps the band on his back and goes right through the wall. So that's what a big band drummer has to have. Still play musically with them, but own that beat and have the band right here. As Mel Lewis said, I like to feel like an oversized stuffed sofa that the band can sit on when they play. Not lay on, but sit on. So all these things are in your mind every time you're playing, and they come to the forefront. And that's when the compliments start coming back to you. That's like, man, what's so comfortable about this? And I think Mel Lewis sofa. That's what's so comfortable. It's the sofa. So,
are there Von Ohlen stuff that you hear? I mean, you talk about that.
Yeah, John was really had a great mental outlook on playing this instrument. He would do things like ask me to pull myself out of myself and observe the whole drum set and observe the whole room, observe the whole bandstand from standing behind. And not anybody else, it has to be you. And you see what's going on, and then your awareness is so high that you make the right decision at the right time with your musical taste to lay that in there. So just the awareness was a big deal with him. With the relaxation, again, don't ever tighten up to play anything because it's not worth it. It's going to take you out of your groove. More mental aspect than actually physical approach with John. So, and then with Mel, it was like, just hit the cymbal. Let's go. Stomp it off, just hit the cymbal. So everybody had their own thing. Jake Hanna said, pick one spot in the shout chorus and clobber that one spot, and the rest of the time get your head out of the book and just play time and swing the band. So, the simplicity has a place in jazz too. We can get a little too analytical, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. And maybe we talked about some of those drummers, but you worked with some of your musical mentors. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what it was like being around Ray Brown and working with him.
Yeah, I made a list. My good friend John Clayton, when we were at Indiana University, he said, sit down and make a list of who you want to play with. And I said, you mean like the greats? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Count Basie Orchestra, Woody Herman. And he looked at me and said, then you'll play with all those people. But what it meant was you got to get every recording, you have to transcribe all the drummers, you got to know every drummer that was in that seat, you have to know what they sounded like. It's your own curriculum. I made my own curriculum of Don Lamont and Jake Hanna and Art Mardigan and Chuck Flores and Sonny Igo, so I knew what I had to do when I got on Woody Herman's band. So, and others, countless others. So that's your own curriculum you make for setting your path for where you want to go and who you want to play with. I did the same thing with Oscar Peterson. I did the same thing with Ray Brown. And I was fortunate, and I wasn't lucky. I hate that word lucky, because you work your butt off to get to where you want to be. So I was fortunate enough to be presented the opportunity to play with these masters and have them embrace what I did and say, you're what we need. You're the drummer for that seat. And it came about from all the homework you do to get to that point that when you get in that seat, you're not scared. You have the confidence that you're the person. You know more about that job than anybody else in the world because you've done more homework than anybody. So to be able to climb on the bandstand with Oscar and Ray and Herb Ellis at the Hollywood Bowl, July 7th, 1990, and this big grin, it's across your face, and Herb turns around and he says, did you like that? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, that's good, because it ain't ever going to get any better than that. So, there's a certain thing. Everybody you play with, you get their personalities. That's what we do as jazz players. We don't have a choice. Honest players play their personality. So how do you get along musically with each other? How do you get along off the bandstand? That's all connected too.
And with those guys, you found, as human beings, you connected them as
much. Oh,
much.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The first day, Oscar said, get in the limo with me. I want to talk to you about wine and sports, and we just talked the whole 3-hour ride about, like as your best friend. So we had a lot of dinners together. We joked a lot, pranksters, you know. So all that was wonderful.
Oscar?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Really? Like,
Well, they're famous Jazz the Philharmonic pranks that he would do, and if you're on a diet, he would send a box of chocolates to your hotel room, you know, and things like that. So it was a great time. My first dinner, this might interest some of you. Oscar Peterson loved to eat. And so my first night on the band, I was trying to lose weight during this time, and so I sat down and he ordered, like, you know, the 28-ounce T-bone and 2 sides of potatoes and the green beans and a salad, and I'll have the soup beforehand, and you know, I want the chocolate souffle after the, you know, and he gets around to Ray, and Ray orders a huge amount of food. Gets around to me, and I said, I'd like the Caesar salad with chicken, and Oscar turns to Ray and he says, I guess our boy doesn't want to be in the band too much longer. And I said, and I'll have the 28-ounce T-bone steak. So, you know, it's learning how to get along with everybody also, and being pals with them. I really missed that part of it, is having a phone call in the afternoon and saying, hey, let's go out to dinner on our off night, you know. So they become your friends, and it really is important to be able to say that when you work hard to get to that point to play with these people, and then to have them embrace you.
well, there you have it, folks. The great Jeff Hamilton talking about drumming and mentors and brushes. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Sam. My pleasure.